ministers not knowing the names of those who've been held hostages, speaking frankly offensively to some of the families, not bringing home people who had been promised that we'd brought home along with other people, people getting the names of hostages wrong.
Oh.
Ministers do need to recognize.
Can more be done to stop foreign countries in effect taking British citizens hostage and using them as weapons? The Conservative MP Alicia Kearns is the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee who republished a report on this today. Good morning to you, Alicia.
Good morning.
It's one of those things where you think a state like Britain is very powerful, but presumably it's relatively hard if a foreign state wants to do something like put someone in prison, act extrajudicially. Is it relatively difficult for a state like the UK to do much about it?
It's an incredibly difficult challenge. And around the world, our allies are facing the same problems. That is why we are the first committee around the world to have done a report like this. Because whilst we recognise the blame sits solely with abductor countries, we do want to support our governments to be stronger in how they respond to these challenges.
And did you find that there are problems, aren't there? There are problems because you have an angry family, you have often the media involved, and then you have the Foreign Office, you have other parts of the parliamentary and the political system. Is it quite hard to coordinate those in a sensible fashion?
And that's exactly the challenge. So we're calling for the creation of a director of arbitrary and complex detention. That is somebody who would have a direct line to the Prime Minister, who can make sure that we have the cohesion, the continuity, the focus, the creativity that is needed to get our people home. Because the reality is that one of our most important findings was that if you can get people home before they are charged, that is your best window of opportunity. But we have to call a spade a spade. There is too much nervousness within the Foreign Office about calling out state hostage taking for what it is. Families too often are made to feel that they are an inconvenience. And for dual nationals, their Britishness too often they felt was in question, when the reality is that anyone who could claim British nationality, British citizenship, they're walking around being used potentially like a deck of cards. Abductor states always want to have one ace in reserve that they can use to secure their geopolitical aims.
The report refers to ministerial communication has been plagued by inconsistency and clumsiness. I wonder how much in your mind was Boris Johnson, how he talked about Nazanin. It felt like he hadn't been properly briefed. He wasn't quite sure what he was supposed to be saying. And that may have contributed to a problem in that case, for example.
So yes, Boris Johnson has apologised for those comments, but there's no question they caused they were unhelpful. They caused distress. They deeply distressed Nazanin. But there are also other examples of ministers not knowing the names of those who've been held hostages, speaking frankly offensively to some of the families, not bringing home people who had been promised that we'd brought home along with other people, people getting the names of hostages wrong.
Oh.
Ministers do need to recognise that accountability sits with them for this.
What's the offensive thing? Give me an example of offensive speaking to a family, because that sounds awful.
Well, for example, saying to a family, "You're no longer our problem." That for me would be the most heinous failure of a minister in terms of saying that, because yes, there are complexities with some cases. The case I'm referring to, the individual has 3 nationalities. So of course the Iranian government wants to focus on the individual, that focus on US citizenship, because that's where they believe they can get the most bang for their hostage buck, as you might put it. But never, ever is it appropriate to say such a comment to a family.
And this is a real issue for us at the minute in our building, because our sister paper in America, the Wall Street Journal, have lost a journalist, Evan Gershkovich, to Russia. They've arbitrarily arrested him. This is exactly what we're talking about. And the whole force of the American government is going to swing into action. But how good they'll be at getting him out is a very open question, isn't it?
So this is the real challenge that we are trying to tackle, is that too often governments don't swing into action until they see that state hostage aspect of the arbitrary detention. Our argument is, as soon as someone is arbitrarily detained, they could become a state hostage because that state can use them for any benefit. My real worry with Evan, and my heart goes out to him and his family, as does that of the whole of the committee, is that he could be used because Russia, Putin is desperate, he is cornered. He will be seeking to secure prisoner exchanges and things such as that. And that is my great worry for him. And I just hope that he can be brought home as soon as possible.
Just finally, before you go, Alicia, Nigel Lawson has died. I was talking to Andrew Robertson early on, and I wondered whether the things that Nigel Lawson did are what the Conservatives in the modern era talk about doing but seem to fail to do, sort of bring down inflation, cut taxes. Yeah. Where do you stand on his legacy?
So look, he is, the quintessential low tax Tory. He brought the budget from being very much in deficit under previous leaders to being in surplus. He proved that we can reduce personal income taxes. And that is what Rishi Sunak is doing. He has brought down inflation. He is working hard to make sure that the economy can rebuild after the dual attacks of the pandemic and also what has taken place in Ukraine with the renewed illegal invasion. And that is why he will continue to be a real sign of hope and optimism for many Conservatives.
Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
That's Alicia Kearns there, who is the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee.
And if you like that,
you can listen to us.
We're Stig and Asma. Have you forgotten?
Well done. Every Monday to Thursday on Times Radio Breakfast.